Well, hi again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is our draft prospect show, and we're going to talk about another Ole Miss Rebel here today in Walter Nolen. Before we do, let's introduce Logan Landers, our producer and engineer, Vincent Turner, who's our co-host and founder, and then today we have our special guest host. Also with us is Trey Sims. And Trey, today we're going to talk about Walter Nolen. We're going to talk about another Ole Miss Rebel. I know that from a regional rivalry, you go, what are we talking about? So many Ole Miss guys, but this guy brings it. 6'4", give or take. He's 299.999 pounds, a little over 300, and he runs a sub 540 in the 495 range or thereabouts. So he's got some quicks. He's big. He's powerful. He's talented. He gets to the ball. What's there not to like about Walter Nolen, Trey?
He's an athletic freak. Like you said, super talented. Matter of fact, it was funny. He's actually from Memphis. It's just
901.
Inside. But he was the number one player in the country when he came in 2021. Not defensive number one player, not the number one defensive lineman. He was the number one player in the country when he came into college football. He is another transfer. He actually started at Texas A&M, and then he transferred, played 2 years at Texas A&M, and then he transferred last year, which was his best year to Ole Miss. He has played 35 games, had a career 114 tackles, 26 tackles for a loss, and 11 and a half sacks. But very, very gifted, super gifted pass rusher, super quick, for a guy his size. He's also strong, knows how to hold his own and get. I'd like to say he probably needs to get a little bit bigger going to the NFL with some of these 300-pounders, and looks like they even moving up to closer to 400-pounders. But sometimes he can sometimes take plays off every once in a while. I don't know that because it's fatigue or he just thinks he's better than what he is. Because a lot of times it would be against smaller competition that he would take plays off every once in a while. But when it's a big game, when he needed to play against the Georgias, Alabamas, or whoever they played, he showed up and showed out. I know sometimes he can get a little erratic with his hands that could draw penalties, but very quick, very athletic, very dynamic. I like to compare him to like Quentin Williams when he came out of college. I'm very impressed with Walter Nolen. Another person that I would like Pittsburgh to draft if they don't go the quarterback route.
Well, you mentioned a lot of great things there, and Vincent, there are plenty. The speed, the quickness, the power. But I said, what don't you like about? I don't like that he wears number 2. I don't like that. I just don't. I don't see a big. There's no reason on God's green earth that I'm too old, and I know this, and I know how the kids right now they fight for the double numbers. Anything inside number 25, it's up for grabs. And you got offense, defense, and once you become a senior, and you get the pick of the litter to pick any number that you want. I still think a single-digit number for a guy that's big and that fast, it just doesn't look right to me. But if that's all that I can find that he doesn't like, other than maybe he takes off a play every now and then, but still powerful, speed. He's listed right now as the number 6 overall defensive player, and that's the thing I like about him is that you take Abdul Carter. Mason Graham, who's another lineman, James Pierce out of Tennessee, a lot of great players out there, and he's right there with them.
When you think about Walter Nolen, you think about early in his career, and I can understand why he ended up being the number 1 player in the country because I don't want to mention it, but he is from Memphis, Tennessee, played at Olive Branch High School his freshman year.
Hold on. What do you mean? What do you mean you don't want to mention it? Of course you want to mention that he's from the 901. You want to mention that, and you did. Of course you want to mention that. He's a local. He's right from your backyard.
Of course I do, yeah. But I don't want to talk about it today because sometimes I might get overbearing with it. And a lot of people, 100 Yards Football, might say, Vince, please be quiet. We don't want to hear about stack records. We don't want to hear about the barbecue. We just want to talk football. Well, right. Mr. Nolen, he played his freshman year at Olive Branch High School. And Ollie Branch has had some hell of athletes that's came out of the last few years. Darren Bates that played in the National Football League. Sean Coleman has played in the National Football League. Jalen Collins, who's played in the National Football League. DJ Jeffries, who was an outstanding basketball player. And Fabian Lovett right now, who's on the Kansas City Chiefs roster. So the young man has gotten talent right there from the beginning. Then he went to St. Bernardine High School, then played there for a year. Then he went up to Powell, Tennessee as a junior. That's when he really came on, right outside Knoxville. But what I like about him is that when you talk about pure defensive end, you got to talk about explosive, like an atomic bomb. The defensive end position that he played, go back and watch the LSU film this year, how he worked Will Campbell. Will Campbell supposed to be the top tackle in the draft, ain't that right, gentlemen? He worked him, and Emory Jones had 2.5 sacks in that game. But what he reminds me of, Hop, we're going to go old school. You from the great state of California, L.A. I'm telling you, he's got that athletic ability like the one great legend, Deacon Jones. And then he really reminds me of a gentleman I saw playing in college. They went to Oklahoma State, Dexter Manley. This gentleman right here, when it's all said and done, I know my nephew just said he takes some plays off. But when his game is on, go back and look at the LSU film this year. When he went up against Will Campbell and Emory Jones, he gave them the business. Back to you, Hop.
Well, let's break this man down. 6'4", 296. He runs a 4.95 40. We mentioned that. You mentioned that he's from Powell, Tennessee, where he went to high school. He was a state champ at Powell. 5-star guy. Played in the Under Armour All-American game, which really helped to promote his brand and make him one of the guys that everybody would want to have. I'm surprised that he didn't stick around and stay in Knoxville, but goes to A&M. He played in 10 games as a freshman. He started 4 of those. His sophomore year, he started in 10 of 12 games there, and that was in 2023. Then he transfers, and he has an explosive first step. He beats many centers and guards with his first step, with his quickness. He is both a run and pass defender. He can do both extremely well. Tremendous leverage. He stays at pad level on most occasions, except when he starts getting tired. He'll rise up a little bit and play a little bit too high. Sometimes he's guilty of getting washed down the line of scrimmage, which allows for an offensive running back, or let's just say anybody with a ball carrier, to cut back against the grain. He kind of needs to work on his gap responsibility a little bit more. His second move is something that he doesn't have a great one because his first one is so good. Understand that everybody needs a second move. I'm not criticizing him, but he needs to develop a second one, and the use of his hands allowing that to happen. A lot of times he stays with that first move a little bit too long. But there are so many things that he does well. He's going to make somebody's – if your priority is defensive line right now, Trey, I would think between him and really Mason Graham and maybe Kenneth Grant, you can flip a coin, and any one of those guys you can plug and play, and they'll be ready to be there first day of training camp.
For sure. It's funny. I'm gonna shout out. Excuse me. I'm gonna shout out my dad because he's been hyping me up, trying to talk about defensive tackles, because that's exactly what he wants. You name all 3 of them: Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, or Walter Nolen. And I like him about Walter Nolen is he can play inside and outside. He's not just traditionally a nose tackle because he's so athletic, because he's so quick. He can play inside, outside. And with learning a better second move, what better person to learn from than TJ Watt or Cameron Hayward? Just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, I played with the Philadelphia Eagles, and one of the things about Reggie White was that he could play on the outside against a tackle, or you could move him in on that 4-6 defense that Buddy Ryan had when he was the coach with the Eagles. The versatility is something I think, because of Walter's speed, I think he would be a prime target for one of those situations, whether you want to put him in the middle in a goal line or short yardage, or put him outside against the tight end. You know he's going to win that battle, and they'll end up running the ball somewhere else because they won't be able to do it up the middle, or at least not to that side of the ball where he's on. Do you recommend if I'm playing against him, is he one of those guys like LT back in the day where you better know where Walter Nolen is, or else he's going to mess up your offensive play?
For sure. You definitely need to know who he is. Even though he wasn't the biggest like he got to the ball, like he was, like I said, tackles for a loss and all that, but he wasn't the biggest forcer of turnovers. He only forced two forced fumbles, and he recovered 3 fumbles. So he's not the biggest of like forcing turnovers, but he is always around the ball. And I'm sure when he plays, gets better and actually focuses on that, he should be able to turn that around.
Well, that's an interesting comment that you made, because most defensive linemen, part of their job, not exclusively, but part of that is to make sure the guard, the tackle, or the center doesn't get to my linebackers. I'm going to let my linebackers make the play. That's part of what I do, especially on run. I'm going to try to get across the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to occupy at least one and maybe a second guy for a portion of the play, a split second or maybe even longer, and that allows my linebacker. Ray Lewis owes a tremendous amount of his career to the success of guys like Tony Saragusa up in front. He wouldn't get touched. So just little different philosophies. And Walters, again, if he gets above 300, that might slow him down a little bit. But gosh, he's going to be so stinking strong and quick and powerful that he's going to be able to get across the line of scrimmage. I see that. Vincent, give me your final thoughts here on Walter Nolen.
Super talent, excellent prospect. When it's all said and done, we might be talking about him from 20 years being one of the greatest defensive tackles that's played in the game. All I have to say, my final words, and I'm going to let the mic drop. Go back and watch the LSU film this season and how he performed against Will Campbell and Emory Jones. Back to you, Hawk.
Yeah, very interesting. Trey, final thoughts from you.
Again, agree with both. Again, as I said earlier, I would love to see him in a black and gold. But I think any team, because he's a first-round talent for sure, any team will use a Walter Nolen, dominate. If you dominate inside, you can dominate and affect the whole offense. So,
yeah, and for those that don't know, Trey is a Steeler Nation card-carrying, black and gold-loving, Three Rivers remembering Heinz Field digging guy. So we appreciate that. And I'm sure with your father saying, I think if I get him just from that one comment, he says, I build my defense from the front back. And the Steel Curtain certainly did that. I've got 4 guys up front. I got 3 others as linebackers. My 4 guys in the back. Life is going to be a lot easier because my front 7 is as stout as you could possibly imagine it to be. And Walter Nolen would be a guy that would definitely stout and enhance anybody's defensive line. He's a heck of a ball player, and we're going to see him disappear sometime in the first round there in April in the NFL draft. So for Trey Sims, for Vincent Turner, for our producer and engineer, Logan Landers, we want to say thank you for tuning into our Draft Prospects show. Today we got to feature Walter Nolen, a defensive tackle out of Ole Miss by way of Texas A&M. So we wish him all the best, and we wish you all the best as well. Thank you for tuning in to 100 Yards of Football, everybody. Have a fantastic rest.